The diplomatic station Nexus Prime always smelled faintly of ozone and coffee grounds, as if the air filtration system couldn't decide whether it was a machine or a barista. Commander Julian Rourke stepped off the transit shuttle with a lopsided smile and a duffel bag full of unopened briefings. His orders were clear. Smile, nod, don't insult anyone with tentacles, and for the love of Earth, do not flirt with royalty. Which was exactly what worried him. He had a track record. Commander Rourke, said the station director, a sentient crystalline being whose voice sounded like wind chimes having a panic attack. You're early. Early. Must be a glitch in the time-space continuum, Julian said, tapping his chronometer. Or maybe I'm just trying a new thing called professionalism. Heard it's trending. The Lorelian delegation was scheduled to arrive in exactly 32 minutes. That gave him enough time to locate the cafeteria, flirt with the coffee machine until it gave him the strong stuff, and pretend he'd studied their culture past the first paragraph. The Lorelians were beautiful, enigmatic, and terrifyingly formal. The ceremonial veil worn by their royals was a symbol of purity, mystery, and presumably excellent ventilation. Julian wasn't sure why he was chosen to handle the negotiations, but the fact that most other diplomats had mysteriously come down with a suspiciously synchronized flu might have something to do with it. When the Lorelian cruiser docked, silence fell over the station. Julian stood at the center of the welcoming platform, flanked by a few nervous aides and a malfunctioning protocol droid that kept referring to everyone as Meat Unit. A line of armored figures stepped forward first, their armor sleek and humming softly with anti-gravity generators. Behind them, a tall figure emerged, movements fluid, posture perfect, veil flowing like nano-weave silk. Princess Calethria. Human, she said, her voice smooth and crystalline, but with a noticeable accent that turned Commander into Communda. Julian bowed just low enough to be respectful, but not so low that he looked like he was trying too hard. Princess, welcome to Nexus Prime. May your stay be productive, peaceful, and contain minimal explosions. Her lips twitched beneath the veil. It might have been amusement, or mild disgust, or gas buildup. They began walking through the station's grand hall, which was less grand and more suspiciously damp. I trust you have reviewed our customs, she asked. Extensively, Julian lied. Though I may have confused your greeting ritual with an old Earth dance move. If I start breakdancing, stop me. I shall consider that a promise, she replied. The Lorelians were here to finalize a treaty. The war between their empire and the Rilkar swarm had ended 3 months prior, but peace was as fragile as a spacewalk in flip-flops. Julian's job was to ensure the alliance didn't shatter over cultural misunderstandings or poorly timed Earth humor. The first diplomatic session took place in Conference Room Theta 7, a sterile space filled with chairs that adjusted to posture with a bit too much enthusiasm. Calethria sat with regal grace. Julian sat and promptly triggered a lumbar massage protocol that made him bite back a yelp. Our council will require assurances that Terran vessels will not patrol within the Glimmer Expanse, she said. We're happy to agree to that. Though I should warn you, we have one cargo ship captain who's a bit of a romantic. Keeps naming sectors after ex-girlfriends and flying to them dramatically. Perhaps he and I should talk. Julian blinked. That sounded like a joke. Do not let it happen again. The sessions continued over the next few days. Julian learned that Calethria was precise, intelligent, and surprisingly good at passive-aggressive sarcasm. He once made a joke about Terrans being emotionally constipated, and she replied with, "That would explain your poetry." He hadn't even mentioned Terran poetry. She'd done research. On the 4th day, there was an incident involving a Lorelian guard, a suspiciously labeled snack bar, and a mild allergic reaction that turned the guard's armor lavender. Julian took the blame, citing human culinary ignorance, and was rewarded with Calethria's first genuine laugh, a short bell-like sound that echoed through the corridor like a wind chime being very judgmental. "Your people are chaotic," she said later, watching a human technician chase a rogue cleaning drone with a mop. "We call it creativity," Julian said. "You should see our dating apps." "I believe I just did." Then came the dinner. A formal event held in the station's reconfigurable ballroom, featuring dishes from both species. Julian tried the Lorellian delicacy known as Shielvor, which turned out to be sentient algae that hummed classic Lorellian lullabies before dissolving. Calethria noticed his expression. "You do not enjoy it." "It's soothing, like being gently serenaded by spinach." After the event, as they stood on a quiet observation deck, overlooking the gas giant below, Julian found himself speaking more freely. "You ever wonder what would happen if the wrong people fell in love during the right treaty?" Calethria turned toward him slowly. "It would depend who defined wrong." He chuckled. "I've been called many things. Wrong is one of the nicer ones." She studied him in silence for a moment. Then, without a word, she handed him a small crystalline token, an ancient Lorellian gesture meaning trust in small doses. He took it carefully, feeling the weight of something more than diplomacy. Later that night, back in his quarters, Julian recorded a log for Earth Command. Day 7. Treaty negotiations progressing. Cultural exchange effective. Princess Calethria remains unreadable, beautiful, and prone to unexpected zingers. I suspect I'm either earning her respect or digging my own political grave. Either way, I'm enjoying the view. He paused. "Also, remind the cafeteria staff, no more sentient snacks." He ended the recording and leaned back, staring at the ceiling, smiling despite himself. Something was happening, not just in treaties and politics. Something quiet, careful, and slow, and it had long ears and a terrifying poker face. Julian nearly tripped over the gravity stabilizer as he stepped aboard the Lorellian flagship Vireland's wing. The stabilizer, for reasons still being investigated by 6 separate engineering departments, was the size and shape of a garden gnome. No one could explain why. Calethria, standing beside him with her hands behind her back, said nothing as he stumbled, but the brief, imperceptible shift of her veil suggested she was smirking. "This is the part where you pretend you didn't see that," Julian muttered. "I saw nothing, except a proud representative of Terran agility," she replied. The ship's interior pulsed faintly with bioluminescent threads woven into its walls, responding to movement and sound. It was like walking through the inside of a polite jellyfish. Julian tried not to gawk. The walls literally blinked back. "We employ neuroresponsive architecture," Calethria explained. "It harmonizes with the neural activity of crew members. It can adapt lighting, pressure, even color based on emotional input. So you've got a mood ring for a spaceship." Calethria hesitated. "Yes, but with fewer tragic breakups." He followed her through winding corridors, each lined with crystalline panels softly glowing in greens and blues. Lorellian crew members passed with nods and curious glances. Julian did his best diplomatic nod in return, a move he'd perfected during a 2-week stint with an insectoid species who considered blinking a threat. They entered a room that resembled a lounge, if lounges were curated by sentient orchids. Floating seats hovered around a central orb projecting soft music, and a table nearby held refreshments that looked suspiciously like glowing sushi. Julian grabbed one, immediately regretted it, and politely set it down when it twitched. "This is relaxing," he said. "Relaxation is a critical component of high-function function," Calethria said, lowering herself onto one of the chairs. "Your Terran phrase is, 'Don't work when your circuits are fried.'" "Close enough, but I'm filing that one away." Their conversation drifted. Julian shared an anecdote about a Martian trade negotiation that had gone sideways due to an ambassador's allergic reaction to hydrogenated peanut vapor. Calethria, for the first time since their arrival, laughed audibly, clear, short, and entirely disarming. He blinked. "I wasn't sure you were programmed for laughter." "I am many things, Commander. including on rare occasion amused. Just as Julian began crafting a response involving space puns and dramatic hand gestures, a figure entered the lounge, tall, armored, and carrying a data slate. The Lorellian guard saluted with a precise gesture. "Princess, we've intercepted encrypted transmissions from Red Entropy. Their presence within Nexus Prime has been confirmed. We believe they have access to internal scans of your quarters." Julian sat forward. "You've got a mole on the station." Kale3's voice cooled. "Or a spy with very skilled paws." "They're trying to disrupt the peace talks," Julian said. "Classic sabotage. You sure this isn't just a prank from your brother?" There was a moment of silence. Kale3's head turned, almost imperceptibly. "I did not say it was my brother. I didn't mean to imply. I mean not that you. I'm going to stop talking now." She rose, calm but sharp. "We need to act carefully. If we respond too quickly, it will expose our vulnerabilities. Too slowly and they strike first." Julian exhaled. "So we do what every human family does during holidays. Pretend nothing's wrong while low-key preparing for emotional catastrophe. Do all Terran rituals involve chaos and repress tension?" "Only the good ones." Later that day, Kale3 invited him to the observation chamber, an immense dome on the ship's upper decks, showing the swirling nebula outside like a living mural. Julian sipped something she called Vernata, a calming beverage with the consistency of melted glass and the taste of bitter tea mixed with optimism. "I know they're targeting me," she said finally, voice quiet. "Red Entropy believes in purity, in outward perfection. I am not their ideal." Julian looked at her. "You're their princess. That used to mean something." "I wear the veil because my people fear what lies beneath, not because I do." Julian resisted the urge to make a joke about terrible high school acne. "You don't have to tell me what's beneath the veil," he said, "but if you ever do, I'll listen, and I won't run. You are a strange creature, Commander." "Humans tend to be. We're the intergalactic equivalent of throwing glitter at a spreadsheet." Kale3 turned her head slowly. "What is glitter?" "Oh, we'll fix that. Just remind me to never, ever give you access to a craft store." The ship shifted slightly, a course correction. Kale3 looked toward the stars. "I envy your people sometimes. You speak so openly, you laugh so freely. Our society values restraint, control. And the older I get, the more I wonder if we lost something along the way." "Probably," Julian said. "But we've got no shortage of problems either. I mean, we invented reality TV. I am unfamiliar with this programming." "Be thankful." The Lorellian guard re-entered. "Princess, the transmission has been traced to a storage module in Nexus Prime. It appears to be broadcasting live video. We believe they have footage of this chamber." Kale3's voice sharpened. "Cut the feed, erase the stream, if it has reached the outer networks. We are already purging it, Princess, but the source is still active." Julian stood. "Time for a little station visit." Kale3 held up a hand. "You will not go alone." He raised an eyebrow. "I like it when you talk protectively. It makes me feel important." "You are important, unfortunately." They returned to Nexus Prime under tight security. The rogue signal was traced to a nondescript storage container. Inside, a cloaked figure and a makeshift transmitter built from repurposed vending machine components and a karaoke drone. When the guards burst in, the figure tried to activate a failsafe. Julian hurled a container of alien pudding at the control panel and short-circuited the system. Later, in a debriefing room dimly lit by flickering screens, Julian leaned back, arms crossed. "Karaoke drone, that's a first." Kale3 sat beside him. "This will escalate, they do not forgive." "Then let them be angry," Julian said. "They're cowards, you're not." Her silence stretched just long enough for the tension to settle into something unspoken. He looked at her. "You ever feel like we're just winging it?" "All the time," she said, "but sometimes winging it works." As they left the chamber, he noticed something new in her stride, something that looked a lot like quiet defiance. She didn't need a veil to lead, and maybe soon The stars would know that too. Julian woke up with the vague sense that someone had rearranged the artificial gravity in his quarters just to spite him. His pillow had migrated to the ceiling during the night again, and he made a mental note to bribe engineering with Earth chocolate to finally fix the glitch. As he floated toward the wayward pillow, his communicator chimed. "Commander Rourke," came Kale-3's voice, composed but unmistakably amused. "Your gravitational field appears to be experiencing another rebellion." "Let it be known," Julian said as he drifted downward, "that I bravely faced off against hostile furniture and lived to tell the tale." "You are 2 minutes late for our excursion." "Excursion? You never said anything about an excursion." "I did. You were eating something called toast and humming the theme to a Terran crime drama." "That's my focused face." By the time Julian arrived at Docking Bay 9, she was already waiting beside a small Lorellian cruiser with wings like polished obsidian and an engine hum that sounded suspiciously like contented purring. Kale-3 stood beside it, arms crossed, expression unreadable beneath her veil. "We're going somewhere with gravity that works, right?" Julian asked. She stepped aboard without a word. The ship lifted off smoothly, slipping into suborbital drift with a burst of white-blue thrusters. Julian dropped into the co-pilot seat and examined the console. "Is this the part where I press buttons and accidentally launch a warhead?" "I would recommend against that." The destination emerged on the viewscreen. A self-contained orbital habitat known as Eclipsora Garden, a human Lorellian joint project filled with artistic interpretations of what peace looks like in 37 species. The habitat welcomed them with floating calligraphy, a Lorellian poem about unity projected in soft light above a human bronze sculpture shaped like two hands almost touching, though Julian always thought it looked more like someone about to drop a sandwich. Inside, they walked along a spiraling path bordered by levitating flora that adjusted their glow based on proximity. Kale-3 paused near a Terran-inspired installation called Kaleidoscope of Memory, a slow-moving crystal sphere that played audio logs from Earth's early space settlers when touched. Julian tapped it. A gruff voice spoke. "Day 19. The hydroponics unit smells like pickles, and I think Jenkins stole my socks again." Kale-3 tilted her head. "Was Jenkins ever punished?" "Oh, he was sent to the moon for 6 months. Worst punishment imaginable, no proper coffee." They moved through zones marked by bioluminescent markers. One chamber simulated zero-gravity snowfall. Another played shifting harmonic frequencies that made Julian's teeth vibrate in harmony. Eventually, they stopped beneath a dome of transparent alloy giving a clear view of the stars beyond. Kale-3 spoke first. "My people designed this place as a sanctuary, yet I've never come. Until now." Julian glanced at her. "Because you weren't allowed, or because you didn't want to?" She hesitated. "Because I wasn't ready." He sat on the low bench beside her. "Ready for what?" A long pause. "To be seen." Julian nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think the people who really matter, they already see you." She turned her head toward him. "You say that like it's simple." "Simple's overrated. Complex things taste better, like spaghetti or planetary alliances." She didn't laugh, not quite, but she didn't turn away either. Then the floor vibrated. A low tremor pulsed through the habitat, subtle but wrong. Julian stood immediately. "That's not art installation." One of the intruders turned, Lorellian, judging by the ears, but masked and unmarked. The other was human, lean and nervous. They bolted. Julian gave chase, dodging between kinetic sculptures and one rather aggressive floral display that sprayed him with calming pheromones. He caught up to the human first and tackled him behind a kinetic fountain that started singing opera in protest. "Easy, buddy," Julian said, pinning the man's wrist. "You drop anything explosive, and I will make you sit through Terran tax code lectures." The Lorellian guard caught the second intruder moments later, dragging him toward Kale-3 with restrained fury. "These were coordinated," she said quietly. "They were embedding a disruption node. It would have hijacked our neural harmonic systems and broadcast subliminal distrust signals. Julian blinked. So, basically, brain static that makes everyone paranoid. Yes, effective, subtle, and cowardly. They handed the prisoners to station security. Julian brushed dust from his coat. Do I get a badge for thwarting terrorism? Or at least a snack voucher? Kale-3 gave him a look that might have been fondness disguised as disapproval. Later, back aboard the cruiser, silence hung between them. Stars passed like whispers. Finally, Kale-3 said, "You handled yourself well. I aim for barely competent and occasionally heroic. You exceed expectations." Julian leaned back in the seat. "Coming from you, that's practically a marriage proposal." Kale-3 turned toward him. "You joke, but humor is how humans approach fear, is it not? Sometimes, also awkward dinners and traffic violations. I fear what comes next," she said, "but less when you are near." He looked at her carefully. "That's the nicest terrifying thing anyone's ever said to me." She reached into her sleeve and handed him another small crystal, this one green. "Hope," she said. He accepted it, cradling it between his fingers. "You're going to keep making me feel things, aren't you?" "Only if you keep surviving," she said. And for once, he didn't have a joke ready. Julian barely had time to finish his synth caffeine before alarms began blaring across Nexus Prime. Not the usual "someone microwaved metal again" warning, but the kind with flashing red lights and a computerized voice calmly suggesting evacuation in 6 languages, one of which was entirely whistling. He looked up from his console. "Kale-3, if this is another secret field trip, I'm filing for hazard pay." She appeared on the main screen, her expression composed but sharper than usual. Red Entropy just seized control of 2 outer sectors of Lorelian space. They're no longer a fringe group. They've declared sovereignty. Julian sighed and tossed the mug toward the recycler. It missed. "Can we have 1 week without a galactic crisis? Just one. They've called for my removal from the royal line, publicly." "Well, that's dramatic. Do they do press conferences or just skywriting over moons?" Kale-3 didn't smile. "They're demanding a return to genetic purity. To ban all treaties, to preserve what they call Lorelian perfection. They released a list of reasons I'm unfit to lead." Julian crossed his arms. "Let me guess. Number 1, befriending Terrans. Number 2, beating them at chess. And number 3, she paused, the veil." Julian straightened. "So that's what they're afraid of." "They've always feared it. I just never gave them the satisfaction of showing it." There was a long silence. Julian finally asked, "What happens if you do?" She answered with a question of her own. "What happens if I do?" Aboard the Vireland's wing, the command center was tense. Officers moved swiftly, relaying sensor data and intercepting encoded transmissions. Kale-3 stood at the center, Julian at her side, both facing the holographic map of their territory. Dozens of red markers bloomed across the grid. "They're not just taking ground," Julian said. "They're rewriting your map." "They've hacked parts of the Galactic cartographic network," replied a Lorelian officer. "On public star charts, the red entropy state is already labeled." Julian groaned. "Of course, if you can't win legitimacy, just Photoshop it." Kale-3 gestured to the map. "We need to reach the capital. The High Council has gone silent. If we don't show strength now, they'll assume you're complicit. Or afraid. Or already gone." Julian rubbed his face. "Do we have a fast ship? I'm talking illegal in 3 systems fast." "I have one," she said, "but it was impounded." He blinked. "Impounded? Why?" "I parked it in an ambassador's personal hangar. I may have bypassed a few security codes." He grinned. "I'm so proud of you right now." An hour later, they stood in front of a stealth cruiser, painted with a symbol that looked suspiciously like a Lorelian insult. Kale-3 handed him a neural key. "Do not press the red triangle," she warned. "Why?" "It activates the countergrav inversion field. It turns the entire ship upside down." "Why does that even exist?" "It was a dare." Once aboard, the ship responded instantly to Kale-3's presence. The controls lit up in a soft purple glow. Julian took the co-pilot seat and flexed his fingers. Let's go annoy some fascists. They jumped through subspace corridors so tight that the stabilizers squealed in protest. The interior lights flickered, and the AI announced turbulence in a soothing voice that did absolutely nothing to make the ride less stomach-churning. As they emerged near the Lurelian capital world, the view took Julian's breath away. Warships hovered above the city's upper orbit, bearing red entropy insignia. Broadcasts jammed standard comms, flooding local systems with propaganda. "We need to cut through their perimeter," Calthria said. "If we reach the Capitol Tower, I can initiate the planetary broadcast node." Julian raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, you're planning on talking to the entire planet." "Yes." Wearing the veil. She looked at him. "No." They maneuvered through debris fields and half-functioning satellites. One red entropy frigate caught sight of them and fired. Calthria rolled the ship in a tight spiral, clipping the enemy's stabilizer ring and sending it spinning into a cloud of its own drone scouts. Julian whooped. "Remind me never to question your flying again." "You already did, twice." "Still counts." They landed hard on a rooftop near the Capitol Tower, sprinted through corridors now abandoned by the terrified civil staff. Inside the council chamber, emergency lighting cast long shadows across marble columns and holographic murals. Calthria activated the master control panel. "I can override the planetary net from here, but they'll detect the spike in seconds." Julian pulled out a compact jammer from his coat. "Let them. This buys you 3 minutes." She nodded and stood before the broadcast lens. Slowly, deliberately, she reached up and removed her veil. Her face, scarred and marked with subtle lines of genetic damage, was calm and resolute. She spoke. "I am Calthria of the Lurelian bloodline. I have worn the veil not out of shame, but because you told me to be ashamed. Today I refuse." Across the planet and then across the star systems, her message played. "I am not broken. I am not impure. I am not less because I do not match your image of perfection. You fear me because I survived what you did not." Julian watched from the side, silent. She continued. "You say I betrayed our legacy by speaking to humans, but it is they who reminded me that legacy is not fixed. It is chosen. I choose to lead without fear. I choose to show you my face." Transmission complete. Seconds later, red entropy forces arrived. Julian held up a small device. "Hey, fellas, ever see a pulse beacon implode a gravity field?" They hadn't. The explosion flipped the entire landing platform 90 degrees, sending red entropy troops scattering and giving Calthria just enough time to activate the escape lift. Back aboard their ship, she looked at him. "You stayed." He smirked. "I like dramatic speeches, especially when they come with zero-grav combat." She leaned closer. "You said once that humans survive by winging it." "We do. I think I'm beginning to see the appeal." They disappeared into hyperspace, the stars rearranging behind them, her veil folded and left behind on the council floor. Julian stood in the middle of a war room full of floating data displays, interspecies comms chatter, and one extremely irritable Lurelian admiral who kept insisting the diplomatic initiative be renamed the Calthria Accord, and not, as Julian had jokingly submitted, Operation Hug the Future. The admiral did not appreciate humor. Neither did the table, which had attempted to eject Julian 3 times for unauthorized puns. Calthria entered without announcement, and every officer in the room stood, except Julian, who was mid-sip of a protein smoothie that immediately betrayed him by exploding. "You were not aiming for subtlety," she said. "Subtlety is for people who didn't just drink fermented algae through a faulty straw." "We are live in 8 minutes," she said, eyes narrowing just slightly. "Your sarcasm reserve should be rationed." "Don't worry, I brought extra." The final summit would broadcast to 7 species, including 3 who had only recently stopped hurling gravity bombs at each other. The agenda: formal recognition of the newly formed interstellar peace cluster, complete with joint command, shared resources, and Julian's personal contribution, a rotating interspecies trivia night. Calethria had tried to veto that, but he'd lob it hard, citing cultural bonding and the diplomatic power of obscure Terran film quotes. Behind the scenes, Red Entropy's collapse had come quicker than expected. After Calethria's public reveal, sympathy spread among younger Lorelians, artists, and, surprisingly, military defectors. Public sentiment shifted. Generals resigned. The propaganda machine sputtered and turned on itself. Turns out, galactic fascists didn't do well when faced with emotional vulnerability and a broadcast seen by 4.2 billion citizens and their pets. Now, in this final act, all that remained was consolidation and a decision. After the summit concluded, Calethria met Julian in the gardens of the diplomatic compound. Less garden and more carefully curated ecosystem floating on a gravity-neutral platform. The synthetic birds chirped like they'd memorized a motivational podcast. "They want me to ascend to the high crown," she said, "permanently, as Empress." Julian blinked. "So you'd basically be the queen of everything that doesn't explode too often." "I'd prefer to think of it as stewardship of a recovering order." "That sounds nobler." She looked at him. "It means I stay here, on Lorelia, for years." He nodded slowly. "And I don't suppose the high crown gets a +1. Her voice softened. "You're not one for crowns. I've been known to wear a metaphorical tiara now and then. I cannot ask you to stay." "I know." He kicked at a floating pebble which politely hovered away. "I could apply for a position," he said. "Diplomatic liaison, head of human integration, ambassador of emotional chaos." "That one sounds accurate." They stood in silence. Then Calethria reached into her coat and pulled out a small black cube, the same crystal token format as before. She handed it to him. "Belonging," she said. Julian exhaled slowly. "That's the last one, isn't it?" She nodded. "Trust, hope, belonging, the 3 tenets of old royal oathcraft. I thought those were mostly ceremonial." "They are, but I'm not." He smiled. "Neither am I." In the weeks that followed, things moved faster than warp lanes on clearance sail. The interstellar peace cluster established its council chambers on a neutral moon, Julian's suggestion. It had excellent parking. Calethria ascended to the high crown, her coronation attended by every faction that once considered her unfit. She stood without her veil, with scars unhidden and spine straight, delivering a speech not about heritage but transformation. Julian did take the liaison job. It came with an office, a panic button, and an assistant who was technically a sentient mushroom with a PhD in Terran psychology. They argued daily about the nutritional value of pizza. His first year was rocky. Bureaucracy moved slowly. Trust moved slower. But every time he walked into a tense negotiation room, he remembered her voice, steady, clear, and unafraid, and he did what she had done. Told the truth, even if it made people uncomfortable. He saw Calethria often, professionally at first. Then at dinners, events, long walks across the gravity gardens. Neither said what they were building, but both knew. One evening he found her waiting by the ancient glass mural